Hi everyone, it's Catchy aka OBiGem. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified for all future videos. And if you like what you see, please do also hit the like button so I know to keep making content like this. So the holidays are always a tough time for me because I am super prone to seasonal depression, and as I've briefly mentioned before, bad things have happened to me around Christmas, so I've instantly put on edge by December 1st. And I say this to say I've been sitting on LP footage for a few of my LPs, and I've attempted recording new footage for the ones I have in progress, and I've instantly become demotivated every time. LPs are such a labor of love, and if I didn't love making them, I would have pivoted to something else completely, because I definitely labor on my LPs out of love for storytelling. I am a writer. I love to hone my craft through creative writing, and making stories in The Sims has been a fun challenge in perfecting my storytelling abilities in a new medium. But the big fat elephant in the room is LPs in the Sims 4 community have kind of died, and I'm all the way broken up about it. It's not just disconcerting because it feels like my own projects kind of wither under depressingly low views, but it's disconcerting because LP content is my favorite Sims 4 content to consume. When I'm doing monotonous work that is a slog to get through, there is nothing more comforting than listening to a story to get through it faster. It's why I love podcasts, it's why I love audiobooks, and it's why I'll always prefer listening to an LP over commentary for speed build. No shade to speed builds, as they're fun too, but if I had a choice, it would definitely be a fun LP. So the question to be asked here is, why have LPs died? So today I was supposed to be editing footage for episode 4 of Growing Up Genki, and I will eventually get to that, but don't worry, I haven't canceled anything as far as my current in progress LPs. But as I was staring at that unedited footage, completely dejected, this passed my Twitter screen. A shout out to OceanSins for retweeting it and bringing it more visibility, so I wanted to spend some time disseminating some of these tweets, what they mean, and if there is a silver lining or a bright light at the end of the tunnel that LPs could in some way or fashion come back into style. So the first tweet by Peachtrees points out something that was said more than once in this thread, that people don't have the attention span for LPs anymore. We do live in a world where people are less willing to invest in long-form entertainment, and I can't say I fully understand it, as I've never been that girl who isn't willing to invest some time in content if it's good, but there's no denying what the masses are showing, and TikTok is a big thing for a reason. Its predecessor Vine becoming a big thing wasn't a fluke either. So people like to get in and get out, find something to enjoy quickly and then move on, and LPs don't really provide that type of content. The next tweet actually segues nicely into my next point, which is, if people aren't willing to invest, what are they willing to watch? And I think the community figured out real fast, if they can't grow an audience on serial content that requires an investment their audience isn't willing to make, then how can they serve them something in the style of LP without requiring that investment? So to that, in comes the Sims 4 challenge videos. Now don't get me wrong, watching challenges can be fun, but it feels like these more episodic style of doing the LP have taken over any space that a serialized LP could occupy. People love 100 Baby Challenge, Not So Berry, and Rags to Riches, but I think this might have caused a divide and a disruption, and has made it so that there is a very small audience left willing to watch LPs, and their dish du jour is very specific. The fact of the matter is, there is still an audience that will watch LPs, but I think some of the reasons thrown out for why LPs have fallen out of favor, low attention spans, samey challenge type LPs, oversaturating the LP sphere, turning a lot of people off and away from LPs, has also turned off people from discovering new LPs. Because the bright spot here is people are still interested in watching LPs. I know this because in the same thread asking what happened to them, people shouted out big simmers who still make them and that they enjoy watching and rewatching. So what does that mean for people thinking, is it worth it to start a channel by making Sims 4 LPs? The truth of the matter is that the state of things right now is it will be very hard, far harder, to grow any type of Sims 4 channel with this kind of content over literally anything else. But it is still possible. Don't be afraid to be bold with your storytelling. Think it through before recording so you're sure you're building an engaging storyline. Just as an aside, completely off the script, when I first started making my Sims 4 LPs, I didn't really have a clear idea of where I wanted to go storyline wise with it. Doing storytelling in the LP format is very different from writing a story out. As I mentioned before, I am a writer, and I don't say that flippantly. It's a craft that I have studied and spent time doing. I got my master's in fine arts in creative writing, so I'm very well acquainted with storytelling. And when I say that it's something I enjoy, I really mean that. Otherwise, I never would have spent money to go to school to study that craft. But when you're storytelling across different types of mediums, it requires different type of work. You can't really expect someone who's used to writing one way to easily transition to another way. You have to study that new format. And it required a little bit of studying for me to perfect how to LP and video and clipping different footage together in a video. Not to say that I'm any kind of expert on making LPs, but these are just things that I noticed made my LPs in particular better than when I first started making them. So my first go at it with doing it wasn't particularly good. It took the first 2 videos of my first ever LP kind of get a rhythm into how to make an engaging storyline. And I think that's something that I'm hoping that going forward, people who are interested in doing LPs really take into consideration. It's not something to be taken for granted, the type of work that goes into making an engaging LP. And I think when people are deciding whether or not this is the type of content they want to include on their channel, they really should consider what stories they are interested in making versus what content creators they hope to emulate. Because another thing to consider as far as content, LP content that people are still consuming, is those bigger content creators who make LPs in the Sims community have really benefited off of essentially brand loyalty. So I don't want to go too deep into that because I do touch on that a little bit in what I'm about to say next. But I do want to say, to the end of making your stories original, do a twist on a tried and true LP type of story, like single mom or single dad, runaway teen, pregnant teen, what have you. Breathe some new life and interest into those ideas by trying something slightly new with them or inventive. There's so much creativity to be had in this sphere, and so many people are waiting to see it, me included. But in the meantime, for those of you out there who do love LPs, who show up to watch LPs for some of the bigger simmers, give some of the lesser known ones a chance. Before I shout out some really great smaller content creators who make great LPs, I do want to circle back to the idea that if you are interested in making LPs, it isn't the best way to start out to try and emulate some of those bigger content creators, because they are working heavily off of the brand loyalty that all of their fan base has devoted to them based off of earlier content and how the space had started out on inception. Where Sims YouTube is now is very different from where it was 5 years ago, and the type of content that was capable of taking off then is much different than it is now. So it is important to consider when you're making an LP whether you want to do something that has a very story-based setup, planned out layout for it versus someone just watching you play. And I say that because if you're going to make an LP that is just showing you play the game and you're brand new and no one knows who you are in the community, the likelihood of building a following off of that is going to be highly dependent on your personality. And I say that to say that it's not impossible to have an LP that is basically you just playing the game. Some very big Sims YouTubers have built their following on making LPs like that. One in particular that I enjoy watching is DSims. Almost all of her LPs are just her playing the game. It's deceptively simple in the way that she crafts her LPs, but she puts a lot of work into her LPs on the back end as far as building her storylines out in her head and building out her worlds. Essentially, there's a whole lot of off-screen work that Dee clearly puts into her Sims 4 videos, so I'm not discounting that, because I can tell from how she does things that it's not something spur of a moment of her just turning on the game and playing, but a lot of that early groundwork she put into really putting together a system of how she makes her worlds and crafts her characters so that she can just turn on her recording and just record an episode and get people engaged, is reliant heavily on the fact that she does that groundwork up first, and then she fills in the rest as far as her recording the episodes with her huge personality. I think those two things coupled together is what makes her such a successful LPer in the Sims community. But not everybody has such a huge personality, and to that end, you really want to play to your strengths. For me personally, like when I play, my strength is definitely more storytelling based than being an explosive in-your-face personality on screen. It's just not who I am. I'm far more soft-spoken. I can definitely be a whole lot more boisterous, but I am very introverted, so that's not going to come off as easily in an LP if I were to just hit the record button and play my game and not really think about, okay, what objective am I working towards, what's the storyline, and how am I going to use the storyline to get people engaged. Those are the things I've learned to really key into to make my stories more interesting, because it's very clear, especially from the first 2 episodes of my Runaway series, that relying on being able to react in an interesting way just by hitting the record button and playing the game wouldn't be enough to make an interesting LP episode. And I do want to emphasize that making an LP where you're essentially just playing the game and filling in the gaps with an incredible personality is definitely doable. It's just exceedingly harder to stand out in the space and to pick up a large viewership pretty quickly if you're 100% relying on that and no storytelling at all. But the LP space is pretty nebulous, and I'm still trying to understand it, so it's very likely you could be one of the few that's able to do that and grow fairly quickly and have huge followings and not be lost in the sea of other LPs by just making your LPs that way. But I do think in general what this Twitter thread has pointed out is how much people are looking for creative storytelling that stands out from the crowd of a million different challenges and some of the same type of storylines, such as single father, mother, pregnant teen, and the like. So to that end, the next thing to consider is if you do like LPs out there and you do enjoy some of the bigger simmers, then consider giving some of the other lesser known simmers a chance, because there are a million different LPs out there you can watch. The great thing is the Twitter thread of reference did showcase that there is still an audience that's interested in watching LPs. A recurring tweet in that thread was people didn't know why LPs died, but they're still interested in watching them and they love to watch them. But the other recurring theme in that thread was a lot of the LPs that a lot of those Twitter accounts shouted out were some of the bigger ones that have LPs that these individuals will watch over and over again. So my plea at the end of this video is to give some of the lesser known ones a chance. I know a lot of viewers have burnt out on trying other LPs, so it makes sense that a lot of viewers will watch one LP from a big simmer and no others, but trust me, there are so many other great ones out there. If you enjoy Ocean Sims Noble Legacy, you'll enjoy the heck out of Miss Monty's The Jeffersons, Sweet Tea Simmer's Winchester Legacy, and Plumby's Rose Hill Legacy. If you love Urban Sims 100 Baby Challenge, you'll get a kick out of Lady Sweetheart's amazing 100 Baby Challenge, and also Common Mushrooms has a great 100 Baby Challenge too. And if you can't get enough of Not So Berry, like Nicole's Not So Berry series, give a look at more Rossi, Malixa, and Florida's Not To Berry series. You will not be disappointed. It's indicative we're in for many more years of Sims 4, probably for much longer than any of us predicted, so I'd love to see the community continue to grow and LPs to make a comeback. It will be interesting to see how the landscape changes as EA continues to work on the game, and who knows, maybe some of these improvements could lend themselves to better storytelling and people wanting to fall in love with a good LP again. If that's you, please be sure to check out some of the channels I shouted out. And not to toot my own horn, but toot toot, I've linked my LP playlist in the description and the pinned comment below. Until next time guys, please stay safe, stay healthy, and of course, as always, stay dazzled. I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Space. Girl, you told me that's what you needed. Lights in my face, yeah, 'cause you were coward and that was easy.